Good evening. I am Attorney Stephen Leahy, and this is today's tax talk. Lots going on here. Before I come on the air, I always check the news to see what happened. Big news today with the IRS. So we're going to talk about it. Join us. Okay, thanks so much for joining us today. We're going to talk about the sweeping IRS powers. Their news. I've been talking about this. It seems like I talk about the same thing every day because there's news every day about the three things that I talked about. Let me put on my ears here. I forgot. Okay, so these are the. Elizabeth Warren came out today. There was a Senate hearing, and the commissioner of the IRS was there, and they both had a love fest about how great the IRS is and how they can save us all. And so I'm going to read that story first. I think that's the first one that I'm going to talk about. It's the story. There's another story about the IRS criminal division and a sting operation, which I thought was really interesting. And that's what I was going to lead off the show until I found this story here. Until I found this story here. Okay, IRS chief tells Elizabeth Warren more transparent bank data can fight tax evasion. That's like the police chief saying, if we can go in everybody's house and check, we can prevent crimes, right? If we could check beforehand, and if we had the right to go in everybody's home and look around, make sure there was nothing illegal, well, that would eliminate crime. And so the IRS is saying, let's look at everybody's bank account every year, all the time, and that way there won't be any problems, and nobody will be able to cheat the government. At what cost? And that's really the question. IRS chief told Warren that relying on banks to report to their customers' accounts could help cut, and here it is, the tax gap, which is I'm always talking about the tax gap. That's the three boogeymen. Remember the tax gap, the millionaires and billionaires, and cryptocurrency. These are what they're using against us to institute these massive sweeping powers for the IRS to take over. They're in every aspect of our lives, and you can't hide anything. Well, why would you want to hide anything, Attorney Leahy? Well, maybe I don't want to tell you why I want to hide something. Maybe I don't want the IRS going through my bank account, and maybe I'm doing nothing wrong, and I still don't want them to go through my bank account. Makes sense to me. So Rettig, who is the commissioner, a Trump administration holdover, and they like to say that somehow that gives him credibility, like he's not an IRS guy because he's from Trump, touted a provision in the American Families Plan that would require banks to report on their customers' withdrawals and deposits. So everything that goes in and out of your bank, and all your bank accounts, not just one, and not just for businesses, not just for the millionaires and billionaires, not just for people with crypto, everyone. They want the banks to provide your bank records all the time to the IRS. The IRS estimates that for every 1% improvement in voluntary tax compliance, first, that's not voluntary tax compliance if they're going after my bank account. Now, what they're saying is we're going to look at your bank account, so you have to comply. You're going to have to tell us everything because we're going to look anyway. And so then you'll comply. So for every 1% improvement in voluntary tax, federal annual revenues would increase by $30 billion a year. Again, how reliable is that number? Who knows? It depends on what you say the tax gap is, right? They say the tax gap is 200 billion, 300 billion, and now they're telling us it's a trillion, and maybe it's 2 trillion. whatever it is. It's all an estimate. They don't know. The head of the IRS believes more rigorous disclosures from the banks, the nation's banks, could help fix a yawning tax gap and recoup billions in owed revenues. In a letter viewed by the commissioner, that relying on banks to report basic information about their customers' deposits and withdrawals could put a big dent in annual tax evasion. I have to chuckle because there's basic information. It's just basic information. We just want everything. It's just basic information. A source provided CNBC with a letter which is expected to be released Thursday. The source disclosed its contents on condition of anonymity. The IRS chief told Warren in Friday's letter that years of budget cuts have left the agency unable to prosecute those who failed to pay their fair share in federal taxes. I've addressed that on many occasions about the IRS budget, and somehow it's they're not funded enough. The $13 billion plus, because there was a lot of extra revenue given to the IRS this year and last year because of COVID and other reasons, but their basic budget is $13 billion a year. $13 billion a year. So it's not, and they're saying, well, that's not near enough for us to answer the phone. I think they're telling us now that they're answering 2% of all calls. So that's not near enough to pay their fair share. That's all we want. We want basic information, everything. To pay your fair share, everything. Every measure that is important to effective tax administration has suffered tremendously, referring to the years of budget reductions. And I already mentioned this, that the bulk of the IRS budget, a very big portion, was on labor to process tax returns that are no longer processed by hand. 95% of all tax returns are now done electronically. And that corresponds with the reduction in the IRS budget. Makes sense to me. However, President Joe Biden's American Families Plan and the bipartisan infrastructure deal would result in significant volumes of new data regarding financial transactions. And there it is again, a Trump administration holdover. The new data will provide the IRS with a lens into otherwise opaque sources of income with historically low levels of reporting accuracy. Opaque, I should say. It's amazing. And so, we'll look under we'll look under your bed, we'll look under your bank account, we'll look everywhere, and we might find some money that you're not paying taxes on, because your kid might have a lemonade stand that they're not paying the tax on. We're going to stop that. Specifically, he touted one provision of the American Families Plan that seeks to shrink the tax gap by requiring banks, this is it, requiring banks to report on their customers' withdrawals and deposits instead of relying on the taxpayers themselves. So we have a very high compliance rate in America, 85% or more. People pay their taxes on time and file their taxes on time, 85%. And a very big percentage of that other 15% eventually pay. And so they just pay late because they're having problems and they pay late. The tax gap is the difference between the taxes paid and taxes owed by law. Actually, the tax gap is an estimate. They don't know what it is. He noted that for every 1% in the tax compliance, federal annual revenues are projected to increase by $30 billion a year. Overall tax compliance, defined as voluntary, accurate, and on time, is estimated by the IRS to be between 82 and 85. I said 85%. But that's what it was. That's what I understood it to be. Obviously, the more that they say that is owed, the lower the percentage of compliance. And it's only an estimate. So if I used to estimate that $3 billion was, or $300 billion was the tax gap, and now I say it's 3 times that, it's at $1 trillion, well, then the percentage is going to go down. Senator Warren, Senator Whitehouse, Senator Sanders, that the IRS, its commissioner, offered a detailed report on how better enforcement could help generate billions for the federal government in owed taxes. Actually, they're not owed yet, right? They haven't been assessed yet. This new information from the IRS makes clear that unless we significantly increase IRS funding, wealth, here it is, here's number two, right? The first one was the tax gap. Wealthy tax cheat and their big corporations will be able to continue to avoid paying their fair share to the tune of billions of dollars per year while everyone else suffers. Who suffers? The government suffers because they want to spend that money. They're not going to lower your tax rate if they get more money, right? They don't get it. Oh, we got $1 billion here. We're going to reduce everybody's working people. We're going to lower their tax bill by $1 billion. No, they're not going to reduce it. They're going to just take that money and spend it. Maybe we can stop. You think that maybe then we will not have deficit spending? I don't think that's going to happen. This is why congressional leadership must include in the budget reconciliation package significant multi-year funding for the IRS to boost enforcement and bring in billions more in revenue each year. Warren was looking to quadruple the size of the IRS. I always say, what free people would create such an entity as the IRS? And now to quadruple the size, it doesn't make any sense to me. The IRS analysis makes it clear we need new reporting requirements in order to improve tax compliance among the wealthiest Americans and to reduce the burden for honest taxpayers. As I just mentioned, it won't reduce anybody's burden. That's not what it's after. His argument is simple behavioral problem. Few people enjoy paying income taxes. That statement is likely even more pertinent for Americans with annual incomes greater than $1 million. Why is that? Those high-income earners are required to pay a greater percentage of their income to the IRS and therefore have a greater incentive to find. You see what they do? They raise your tax rate and then they say, because the tax rate's so high, you're cheating or you're more likely to cheat. So now we need more power because we want to take more of your money. And so it makes more sense because you pay more. So now you're going to be a cheater. We're going to call you a cheater. We're going to come after you. It just doesn't make sense. The statement is likely even more pertinent to, those high income earners are required to pay a higher percentage of their income and therefore have a greater incentive. The banking industry, which would bear the burden of sending the U.S. government more data, protested to the division. Well, think about the reporting requirements for the banks. They already have a lot of reporting requirements to the IRS about every bank and all the interest paid to anybody. They have to report it. But think of the added paperwork that this would require of all banking institutions. And are banks going to take it and pay the extra and not charge more? Well, of course not. Who's going to pay that? Everyone is going to pay more in banking fees. You have to. The bank is not going to shoulder the cost. You're going to shoulder the cost. In their springtime letter, the American Bankers Association and others, so now new reporting requirements for the financial institutions would impose a cost and complexity that are not justified potential and highly uncertain benefits. I agree. It's a fishing expedition. If we can go through everybody's bank statements, we might find $1 billion. But again, at what cost? Furthermore, the trade group added, we believe additional reporting requirements guided by subjective criteria have privacy and fairness implications and the potential to put financial institutions in an untenable position with their account holders. Absolutely, it does. Right? I mean, there is no privacy. Right? And I used that analogy earlier about if we let police officers come into our house and look around, they could probably prevent some crimes. At what cost? Okay, so I just think this is interesting here because here's the number three. Here's number three. The IRS is coming for crypto. Here's what's happening. So here's the number third boogeyman in this article, and that's why I had to talk about this article today. It just hits all of the cylinders. The collective suggested that financial institution reporting is already robust and that providing more funding for audits would be more efficient and fair approach. Debatable. Complicating matters for the budget-strapped IRS. The budget-strapped IRS. I mean, They only get $13 billion a year. How are they supposed to get anything done with $13 billion a year? The budget-strapped IRS is the fact that wealthy earners tend to have access to a variety of ways to obscure the true value of their income and otherwise have more complicated tax returns. Well, that's true. Does that mean they're all cheaters? The IRS says they are. The tax return of a business owner, for example, is far more complicated than that of an employee whose hourly wages or annual salary can be verified by. Well, of course it's more. The IRS has made it more complicated. I mean, how can you point to that and say, again, they create these problems and then they use the problem that they create as proof that they need more. And then whatever they get no more will be reason to do more. While the specific disclosure requirements would ultimately be hammered out by the Treasury Department, they could inform the IRS about the size and frequency of deposits and withdrawals from those accounts. So everything about the account. Yeah, just a little basic information. On the upside, if the tax gap is caused by human error, honest mistakes, or intentional, more thorough communication between the U.S. banks and IRS could ease it. So you're making a mistake. You've made an error. We'll look at it. We'll check your. Don't you already check my tax returns? Well, yeah, but we don't have all the information that you have, or maybe we do, but we want more. We want to make sure that you're being honest. Right now, any person who earns $10 or more in interest from the account at a U.S. bank, brokerage firm, or mutual fund is required by law to tell the IRS about those earnings. That document is called a 1099 INT. $10 or more a year. And they're already reporting that to the IRS. If banks themselves are compelled to provide the IRS with information about the customer's deposits and withdrawals, those customers may be more likely to fill out their tax returns accurately. And if not, the IRS would now be armed with information to prosecute those less than honest. And then they'll need to be bigger because there's more information for them to go through, right? So then we got to fund them more. You fund them now to do this, and then they got to get more funding to go through. We can't go through all these records. We need more people. How can we check on everybody's bank account with this measly budget you give us, even if it's 4 times $13 billion? That, he said, could spell a big win for tax collectors and a big loss for the American people. Why the IRS may be a setback for a bipartisan. Okay, so that's taxpayers are more likely to be compliant when they know the IRS has the information necessary to pursue them should they not meet their tax obligations. Our research shows that compliance is as low as 45% when income is subject to little or no information. Where do they get that number? You think it's to their benefit to lowball that number or to make it higher? Which one do you think is to their benefit? When there is a substantial information reporting, compliance rises to above 95%. So if we could just look at everything all the time, you won't cheat because everybody's a cheater. Using banks, see, this is what's going on. This is what happens whenever the government gets involved and they start, when they start down this road about, everybody's a cheater. So now we got to look at everything. Using banks to crack down on unreported income would likely represent just one step. One step. Not the final step, not the only step, the first step and the one step. So revealing all of your information, all your banking information to the IRS, that's just the first step. Simply knowing how much money flows through an account doesn't necessarily alert the IRS to unreported income. People can receive non-taxable gifts or spend on deductible business expenses, which the tax collector will need to consider. So we'll have to go through everything. Still, the benefits of moving forward with this provision could offset the hurdles, depending on who you talk to. The fact isn't lost on some of the nation's most prestigious economic authorities. Former Treasury Secretary Geithner and Rubin and Paulson and Summers all defended President Biden's effort in a recent New York Times op-ed. Oh, what a surprise. You mean the IRS commissioners believe that the IRS should have more power, and the government thinks that they should have more power? And if we leave it up to them, they'll look at every account all the time? Why don't we let them do that at the beginning? Why don't we let them do that yet? Because it's a violation of our rights. Relying on financial institutions relies on basic information It's just basic information about account holders is a sensible way forward. With better information for the IRS, voluntary compliance will rise through deterrence as potential tax evaders realize there is a risk to evasion. There already is a risk to tax evasion. You go to prison for that. There is already a risk. And to think that the government doesn't find out anybody, doesn't put anybody in prison for it is ridiculous. Of course they do. IRS cracks down on high earners evading taxes. The IRS letter also noted that the wealthiest, so let me go back here and say, well, the wealthiest, they just said, well, they have very complicated tax returns. And there's errors there. Oh, so they're cheating. They're not cheating, or they are cheating because they tell us they are cheating. But then even if they're not cheating, they're cheating because their tax returns are so complicated that they don't understand them. And so there might be errors in there. And so we need more people to look at them. Increased technology funding is essential to link foreign-held assets back to their beneficial owners and to detect potential noncompliance. In advocating for additional funds, he reiterated the need to modernize IRS technology, not only to fend off increasing sophisticated cyber security attacks, but to increase the agency's speed, reduce errors, and allow operations to continue all day instead of relying on staff availability. The years of budget and staffing cuts have left the IRS with about 74,000 full-time employees, at a level not seen since 1973. I've already explained why that is. Excuse me. But the challenges facing the agency, especially the last 6 months, have grown. Okay, so this just keeps going on, and I could go on. The tax department, the Treasury Department's own analysis shows the efforts to close the gap will generate $700 billion in additional tax collections over the first 10 years. So we're going to give up all of our rights for $70 billion a year. That's less than what we left in Afghanistan in equipment. And we're going to give up our rights? I don't think it's a good idea, my own opinion. I wanted to go through the American Families Plan. This is the law that they're trying to pass that allows us. And there's so much in here about taxes. They're going to raise capital gains taxes. They're going to regulate tax preparers. I must have gone over my half an hour because my camera went out. And all this. So I'm sorry I want this. It's amazing to me. Anyway, I just think I wanted to also talk about the fraud. There's some. Let me see if I can. I wanted to mention that story that I was talking about, the IRS putting a undercover person to set up a cryptocurrency exchange, and the IRS goes undercover as a Bitcoin trader in $180,000 sting. So they caught somebody selling drugs, and they were laundering. They offered to provide, and they did provide money laundering services to someone, and someone came forward and took advantage of them. Is that entrapment? I don't know if it's entrapment, but it's close. Are there people out there that want to launder proceeds from illicit activities? Absolutely, there are. Everywhere, always has been, always will be. So to catch a couple with the IRS setting up, why don't we use the criminal law enforcement agencies instead of the IRS to set these traps and to do these investigations? Why is the IRS doing criminal investigations? They have a criminal investigation unit, but to do stings, I just don't. Again, we have gone off the rails, and we have given. Let me just kind of show you this. I just want to show you this story. The IRS goes undercover as a Bitcoin trader in $180,000 speed. So again, it's a good story. Sorry, I didn't get to it today. I'm not, but I really couldn't let go of that story about the IRS. It's to me, it put all the three boogeymen in the same place. For all the reasons, this is what they've been building for 18 months now or more, to double or triple the size of the IRS, to invade our privacy, to get every record that we might have. Remember now, everything's electronic, right? They go through your phone. They can go through you. Are we going to let that happen too? Are we going to let them go through our phone? Let them go through our records at home? Let them go through our computers? You got nothing to hide. What are you hiding if you got nothing to hide? Why wouldn't you let us? What do you got on there that you don't want us to see? Right? Isn't that the attitude? And of course, that's why we have a Fourth Amendment, right? Is to protect us. They need probable cause before they start gathering information and investigating crimes. And they not just on everybody. I think a lot of people don't see it that way, but I certainly do. I see it that way. So now, you probably know I fight the IRS. I fight for my clients. I fight the IRS for my clients. And sometimes when they owe money, and sometimes before they owe money, right? We want to make sure that all of our clients pay all legal taxes and not a penny more. Just makes sense. It's not violating any laws. We want to follow all the laws and pay the least amount in taxes. I think that's what you want, and that's what the Open Tax Advocates provides. So if you're fighting the IRS right now, you should get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today, if you have an IRS problem. If you want to avoid IRS problems, we help people do that too. So give us a call, 312-664-6649. Again, it's 312-664-6649. You can visit us on the web at chicagotaxteam.com or go here, freeirsbook.com. Get a copy of my book, okay? And I'm going to ask you again, share, like, subscribe. If you get to the end this far in, means you found it interesting and informative. Share it with others. Let them know that it's here, and I appreciate that. So I want to thank you so much for joining us here today. I always have fun. That's why I do it, to have fun and to inform. I want you to be informed. So thanks again, and we'll see you again next Monday. Now, remember, tomorrow I have the Watch Talk Radio. We come in about 2 o'clock. So watch for us about 2 o'clock. I have a special guest tomorrow on my show, Ray Kaplan, attorney Ray Kaplan, and she helps people with student loans problems. So if you have a student loan problem, watch the show tomorrow. She'll help you. She'll answer all your questions. So thanks again. See you tomorrow at watchtalkradio.com, or we'll do today's tax talk again on Monday. And we're always on watchtalkradio.com. Thanks again.